Good afternoon, everybody. It's Friday, and it's Jim and Matt, and we got some topics we're going to talk about here. Matt, we're going to talk about what last night might have been, um, it, depending upon how things work out, it might have been Todd Bowles' last game as the head coach of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Um, and then, of course, we got a whole weekend's worth of college and pro sports coming up.
Mm-hmm.
So we will be back just a second. Don't go anywhere. But first, this word from our sponsor, the folks over at Zach Bobo Realty. Okay, everyone. Those of you in the Georgia area, and we're in the Southeast for that matter, give our buddy Zach Bobo a call, and we'll put there you go, 770-876-2790. Okay, 770-876-2790. Zach Bo Realty. Okay, all right, fine. Well, last night, my friend, it was one of the most bizarre games I've seen in quite a while. A team
Yeah.
literally, literally has 19 penalties and comes out of it and win.
Yeah. I mean, you want to talk about a game that was upsetting for myself because I have Kyle Pitts on my fantasy team, and he was sitting on the bench last night. Um, no, but in terms of the actual game itself, that's just a game that the Buccaneers can't lose.
Right.
The way it was like it panned out on the field, you can't lose it that way. And then even going into it, it wasn't one they could afford to lose, just
Mm-mm.
from the division race standpoint of things.
Right.
So a big failure on the part of Tampa Bay last night in those results. I can't blame people for being upset.
Yeah. I mean, the world wants the world in the Tampa Bay area wants um, the head of of the head coach, which is kind of the way it normally goes. Todd Bowles in this case. His post game press conference, Todd was basically said, "Look, we came into this game. We everybody had knew what it meant, but at the same time, he goes, we didn't coach it right, and they didn't play it right." Um, so, I mean, to me, you've got that third down and 28. Then it's a fourth down and 14. How do you let somebody get 14 yards on you when you know the game is in the balance? And there's only two
Yeah.
guys that can, basically beat you. So I don't get it. They didn't touch. Um, they didn't really touch. The quarterback for Atlanta last night,
Hmm.
Kirk Cousins. They didn't really do much in the way of rushing him.
Yeah. You talked about how earlier in the week they brought in Jason Pierre-Paul,
Right.
um, to potentially be an addition for this game. When
Hmm.
when you're in those situations, those are obvious passing downs. You
Right.
have to be able to generate a pass rush with four people,
Hmm.
really with three people ideally. You have to have guys that can win one on one in pass rushing situations. That didn't happen for Tampa Bay, and not only did it not happen for Tampa Bay, it's a situation where you expect it to happen. I mean, Kirk Cousins is as immobile as a quarterback can really get. Like the
Right.
only guy who's going to be worse than him is when Philip Rivers steps onto the field on Sunday.
Right.
Like he's not moving. You know exactly where he is going to be when he drops back to pass. You have
Hmm.
back to back obvious passing situations, and you're not able to get it done. A lot of times, these teams, when they play prevent, they can get really soft and it gives up a lot, which, you saw happen on the first play to Kyle Pitts. That
Right.
really shortened things up. But then to let them convert after that, when you have fourth and 14, you know where the sticks are.
Hmm.
Obviously, obviously you don't want to get beat over the top. That's ideal, but there's got to be a line in the sand drawn at that 14 yards, that first down marker,
Right.
that you don't allow them to go past. Like it's a very clear situation, you know what's coming, and you know where they need to get to. It's
Mm-hmm.
as simple as just not letting them get there. Like I know breaking it down like that, you're like I'm explaining it to a 5-year-old, but that's how easy it. Like that's how simple it is.
Mm-hmm.
Is you keep things in the middle of the field. You don't give them the sideline, and you just keep them short of 14 yards. It's
Right.
an offense that struggled. I mean, it struggled when it's at full go
Mm-hmm.
from a weapons standpoint. And now you're letting this offense get 23 yards in 2 plays. Talked about it earlier in the week when we talked about this game. Said Tampa Bay found ways to win games earlier in the year, and Atlanta
Mm-hmm.
found ways to lose them. Well, last night Atlanta found a way to flip that script.
Right.
And to be honest with you, it's probably a little bit refreshing for Atlanta fans. You know, the
Mm-hmm.
wins are good for them because they don't have their first round pick next year. So there's
Right.
not like, well, we can lose more games and get a better pick. That's not in the cards for them.
Right.
Um, so it's a welcome win. And correct me if I'm wrong here, but I don't think Atlanta is technically dead in the division.
Um. Oh, shoot. Well, what's Atlanta's record? Is what?
5-9, I believe.
Um. No. I mean, in theory,
Yeah.
if they lose out and Atlanta wins out,
Yeah.
then
Okay.
you'd have to have both Carolina Carolina and the Bucks would have to both lose out, and Atlanta would have to win out. And
Mhm.
then it goes to how they did in the division. They lost 1-1 against Tampa. They lost to Carolina. Um, so yeah, that's how it would have to work out.
Okay. Okay.
I wouldn't pin my hopes on it, but yeah, I mean,
Oh
is it
yeah. No.
possible? Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. No.
But my thing, and again, it was talked about, and that you did on that here. It's over, and basically just regroup and say, okay, get do it, but don't let them get there. And this is a guy who blitzes crazy. He's blitz crazy. So you got two choices. You can go cover zero and at which point Cousins has to react, or you as so I don't. You can't do it. You just cannot let that stuff happen.
Mhm.
And they did, and it cost them.
Yeah.
So it's one of those things where there was the interception. There was a lot of people that were blaming Baker Mayfield on that. Look, Baker Mayfield is playing with a sore oblique. He had his receivers last night. The offense, I don't know why they didn't run the ball toward the end of the game instead of that pass, which ended up costing them. Uh, but again, to me, they scored 28 points. They were 14 points ahead with half the fourth quarter to go, and you just to me that's on the defense.
Mhm.
You just can't. You got that. You get the 14-point lead. Don't tell me it's the offense.
Yeah. And I mean, it's it really is. I think it hurts so much more because on paper, going into the game,
Mm-hmm.
you're like, Tampa Bay not only should win this, they need to win this.
Mm-hmm.
You really, honestly expected a little more out of them in terms of the performance. And then when you get out there, not only do you need it, but you're in position to get the win as well, and you
Yeah,
find a way to lose it. It was just, it's a collapse, really.
yeah. And I
And
felt
not,
bad for Mike Evans
yeah,
because he balled out. I mean, he was. You wouldn't have known that Mike Evans hadn't played in a game since game 4.
Yeah. Yeah. So I mean, he played well. Again, you get some weapons back, and you
Hmm.
have this expectation on paper. And I
Hmm.
think that's really what makes it hurt so much is the fact that you were right there in a position to win that football game.
I think, and to put a pin on this, because Carolina is New Orleans this week,
Hmm.
and Dave Canales, we'll see, how he draws it up. New Orleans has that same opportunity that Atlanta has. They can ruin, Carolina's life.
Hmm.
Um, but it's crazy as it sounds, the Buccaneers still, if they can win out, they'll win. And I think the most important thing right now is how did they respond after they lost.
Yeah, that is going to be very important because I mean, controlling your own destiny in any sport is important, but
Right.
especially in football, it's very important. So they still control their own destiny, which is fine,
Hmm.
but it does make you question that. Yeah, okay, we control it. Do we the way we're trending? Is that the best thing for us? Like, are we going to be able to actually close this thing out? I don't know if they're going to be able to be honest with you. The lack of pass rush from Tampa Bay is really the thing that's most concerning.
Hmm. Well, we're gonna have to see how that plays out. Let's flip over for the college schedule for this weekend. Actually, it begins tonight with an FCS quarterfinal on ESPN at 9 o'clock. Stephen F. Austin at Montana State.
Hmm.
Um, you know, I don't know a lot about either one of those two teams, but these are important. Um, this is the only NCAA football championship, and they're
Hmm.
running their tournament as we speak. So these things do have ramifications, and it's going to be interesting. The Celebration Bowl, which is really the big bowl in Atlanta every year for the HBAC schools, has that's going to be noon on ABC with South Carolina State versus Prairie View A&M, and they're playing
Hmm.
that game in Atlanta. The quarterfinal of the FCS, which will be on ESPN also at noon, is Villanova and Tarleton. 1 o'clock, I'm sorry, 3 o'clock on CBS. We got the annual Army Navy game, which is going to be held here in Baltimore. That's a 3 o'clock kick. Uh, two two of the biggest powers in FCS football face off in the quarterfinals on at 3:30 on ABC. South Dakota and Montana. Those have been two teams that year in and year out have been have excelled in that particular area.
Hmm.
Then the other FCS quarterfinal is Illinois State at UC Davis, and that's at 5 on ESPN Plus. Then we have the Cure Bowl at 8 o'clock, which we talked about a little bit yesterday. Boise State and Washington.
Hmm.
So there
Yeah.
you go, boys and girls.
Um,
That's your schedule for the tonight and tomorrow.
yeah. Couple different notes on a couple of those teams.
Sure.
The Montana head coach actually interviewed for the Oregon State head coaching position.
Mm-hmm.
Ended up turning it down. Was it Oregon State or Washington State? It's one of
Washington
those two.
State, I think.
Washington State. He
Yeah.
interviewed for the Washington State job, ended up turning it down. So that's a little note on that. And then as far as that LA Bowl
Mm-hmm.
between Washington and Boise State, that bowl has been discontinued. This will be the last year that the LA Bowl will be played. Initially, it was brought in 2020, intended to be played between a Pac-12 school and a Mountain West school.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but it originally started as the Jimmy Kimmel
Right.
Bowl.
Mm-hmm.
Now will be discontinued, and honestly, I've seen it talked about the expansion of bowls. There's a large discussion about the death of the bowl games supposedly,
Hmm.
A large piece of that is the expansion of these bowl games. We've added so many bowl games, and when you know, say, well, you added. I think they added like 11 or 12 total bowl games in the past 5-ish years, somewhere in there.
Yeah, it's been a lot.
That's 24 other teams now that we're asking to play bowl games. So part of the lack of luster that comes now with the bowl games is not only because of a playoff and the messaging around the playoff and how if you're not in the playoff it doesn't matter. That did not help the bowl games. But the diluting down the amount of bowl games, like it feels like it lessened the importance of them overall because now everybody gets a bowl game no matter what. You don't even win 6 games anymore, you're getting invited to bowl games. 5-7 Florida State had the opportunity to say no. 5-7 Kansas, 5-7 Kansas State. Like so, there's these 5-win schools that are now getting invited to bowl games, and that's a result of just how many of them we play now.
Well, let's actually say what it is, right? The only reason that there's that many bowl games is because ESPN uses it for programming.
Yes, yeah. ESPN has to offer something for somebody to throw on in the middle of the holiday season. When they're at a family gathering or something.
Hmm.
And what better to throw on than like I don't know. I'm trying to think of like Rutgers and Kansas. I know they're not 2 bowl teams this year. What better game to throw on than Rutgers and Kansas? In the middle of your holiday party, as something just to have on in the background.
Well, I think the other part of it was the original concept, anyway, was to give kids, one more chance to play and to play to get rewarded, if you will, for the season, right?
Hmm.
But to me, uh, why do you reward a 6-6 football team, or heaven forbid,
Yeah,
a
I
5 football
yeah that is curious because now you're rewarding teams that really didn't play all that well.
team?
Um, I don't know. I really don't know. Like it's not that kids don't deserve to play. It's the same argument with the inclusion of the G5. It's not that those guys don't deserve the opportunities,
Right.
but it's just like you didn't really earn it all that well. Like the based on the other teams that are playing. I mean, to be honest with you, I don't love the fact that 6-6 football teams,
Hmm.
um, they make bowl games, but they do. So there there's a lot wrong with bowls, and I think rewarding these teams that, quite frankly, didn't play all that well. I mean, like Penn State and Clemson are playing in the Pinstripe Bowl,
Right.
and if it wasn't for the fact that their names are Penn State and Clemson, there is not a soul in the world that would turn that football game on.
Hmm.
Like they're just not. They're you watch them. They're not 2 great football teams. They're 2 average football teams. Exactly
Hmm.
what their record depicts.
It's Rick Neuheisel had a interesting concept, and he
Hmm.
said, "Why don't you take and make week 0 bowl week,
Hmm.
where you take some of the best intersectional type rivalries, or games where you get to see, for instance, a Big Ten team take on an ACC team, in a bowl game in, say, the Gator Bowl, for sake of argument, in Jacksonville."
Hmm.
Uh, he says then it has some interest. Fans would go to the game because you're just coming out. It's basically the last thing of the summer before Labor Day,
Hmm.
and it would create buzz.
Yeah.
And I think that makes sense. And then he says, because then reduce the amount of bowl games at the end of the season, and only the teams, with you know records of better than 8 wins get to go.
Hmm. Yeah. It's an interesting concept, but it's
Mhm.
one that you and I both know will never end up happening because these
Oh no.
advertisers, like
Mhm.
like for Chick-fil-A, Uh, Obviously, they have the Peach Bowl
Sure.
that'll stand alone as a New Year's Six game. But
Mhm.
like in Atlanta, every year they have the Chick-fil-A kickoff game.
Mhm.
Like they're doing this in a way already, with a lot of these quote unquote kickoff events
Right.
and the sponsors that they have. I think Duke's Mayo did one. I think that was the sponsor when Georgia and Clemson played back in 2021.
Right. Mhm.
So there are all these preeminent brands for these bowl games.
Mhm.
Most of the time, they already have a kickoff game.
Yeah. I mean, there's also the situation with regard to most of these advertisers are advertisers for ESPN during the season.
Mm-hmm.
And so this shouldn't surprise anybody, but ESPN makes money off these bowl games.
Mm-hmm.
And the amount of money that the teams get, because it goes to the conference, it's minimal, but, again, it's something. But I honestly, I'm not excited about tuning in the Sun Bowl or any of the other bowls. I mean, I really only care about the bowls that count, which are basically the New Year's 8 bowl games and now the playoffs.
Yeah, and they've made it hard to really care about a lot of these bowl
Mhm.
games. And part of the reason that the idea of playing them at the
Mhm.
start of the season is a good idea is because now you get like you're getting full rosters and you're getting full buy-in from these programs. You're
Mhm.
not getting you're not getting buy-in from the programs. You're not getting buy-in from these teams and these rosters that you would get otherwise at the start of the season.
Mhm.
And it's just not a problem that bowls I think are able to attack right now. Like
Mhm.
I don't know what their path is to making these kids, or I say making, but having these kids want to play in these bowl games. I don't know what that path is. I don't know if there is a path.
No, well, I mean, there's the potential of them actually paying the kids to play.
Yeah.
That's an option. Um, or we go to more all-star games where you got your all ACC team versus the all Big Ten team, right?
Yeah.
And obviously, that would be if you got teams in the Big Ten and the ACC that are in the playoffs. Well, they're not going to play; those kids aren't going to play. But you
Mm-hmm.
can do the all-star type situation again, where you pay the players. I mean, there used to be 3 bowl games that paid players after the season was over. They were all seniors.
Mm-hmm.
One of them, of course, is still around, and that's done in Mobile, Alabama. That's the Senior Bowl.
Mm-hmm.
There was the All American Bowl, which was held in Tampa uh, after after what it went through a lot of different names, but it was after the Outback Bowl. So the
Mm-hmm.
Outback Bowl would be on New Year's Day, and then a week later you'd have this All Star game, the All American game, and then in San Francisco for years you had the Shriners game, East West.
Mm-hmm.
So you had three games where the players were paid to play. You had coaching staffs, that were all-star coaches. In other words, they were professional coaches who, at the time, I'll use a John Gruden for instance. John Gruden isn't coaching right now. Well, John Gruden would potentially coach the East team or the West team. So it was, that's how it worked. And they were well attended because the players on the game, in the games were definitely going to play pro football sometime.
Mm-hmm.
And it was good for the pro teams because they could just watch the games and say, okay, here's some kids. And again, if you're playing in championship games, you wouldn't be playing in that. But back then, they didn't have championship games, so
Yeah.
you got some pretty good guys playing. And a lot of people forget this. And that was in 19 it wasn't until 1975 that both the Big 10 and the Pac-10 allowed their teams to play in any bowl that wasn't the Rose Bowl.
Yeah. I I will say a quick note. I think the East West Shrine Bowl is still played as well.
It is. It is.
So yeah, yeah, those are good games. Those are, and that's the selling point there is like where the bowl games miss is like these are professional opportunities. That's what it has to turn into for these guys. You pay them, and that's a plus. But another reason these guys go to these bowl games is because there's just like the Senior Bowl, the Reese's Senior Bowl is essentially just a pre like combine event to get you in front of NFL scouts.
Hmm.
And that's where it's got to be in terms of a selling point to really get these guys interested again. Is it's got to provide some benefit going forward because the way they view them now is there's no benefit for them going forward. That's
Hmm.
that's the whole reason when everybody was like, well, like let let Christian McCaffrey and Leonard Fournette sit out because that's where this all started. It was with those
Right.
two guys sitting out of these bowl games because what was the reasoning that everybody said, it's all right if they sit out these bowl games because it didn't really provide them like there was no benefit for them to play in
Hmm.
these bowl games. They were only risking injury. That's the way it was pitched. And so that's what people have come to believe. So now they have to find a new way to brand these bowl games for these kids as a professional opportunity going forward.
Right. And yeah, it's crazy. I mean, it's absolutely crazy because again, you're talking about, well, it's something for us to watch, and true, absolutely true. But there's also at the same time some very entertaining, you know, um, college basketball tournaments that are going on
Yeah.
that actually mean something,
Mm-hmm.
and ain't nobody opting out of those games.
Yeah, and that's where I think it's interesting in terms of a ESPN and programming standpoint is they've banked on these bowl games for so long being really their main source of programming through the holiday season.
Hmm.
When will that? Because I mean these there's more and more, and they push them further and further back. These holiday tournaments.
Hmm.
When does their programming shift, or does it shift from these bowl games into maybe more of a basketball focused mindset? Because in basketball, you're not going to have opt outs. You don't have
Hmm.
lack of buy-in from these teams because these are resume building wins that these teams put on their can put on their resume come tournament time. That's not the case for college football.
Mm-mm. I don't, it's just, it's, it's all, like we all say, it's for the money, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's exactly where we are in this case. It's for the money, and you know, it's crazy. I mean, here's one that I keep thinking, about going back old days, right? Just to
Mm-hmm.
see what was like. What'd you think about this? Okay, 19 in from 1934 to 1976 at Soldier Field in Chicago. The the college all star team, right,
Mm-hmm.
played against the reigning Super Bowl, the reigning NFL champions
That's insane.
in a game. I mean, it, up to 1976. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
so the last time they played that game in '76, the Steelers were in that game.
That's you talk about sending lambs to slaughter. I mean, good lord. So like if you because people love throwing that hypothetical around. What if the best college team played the worst NFL team?
Right.
it's not a fair comparison. Like the way these rosters are, you don't, especially now, because before really the transfer portal and NIL,
Mm-hmm.
it, it's it was you had a much larger concentration of talent
Mm-hmm.
at some of the top teams, and even then, these guys are, yeah, maybe their future
Mm-hmm.
is really bright and they pan out really well, but when they're on the high side, 22 years old, if they're playing against these NFL guys, a majority of these guys are going to get smoked. So
Right.
like that as an event and just as an idea was, I mean, it's crazy.
Well, just for those of you wondering who won that game in 1976, um, the Steelers had a 24-0 lead in the second quarter before it was called because of a severe thunderstorm which was going through the Chicago area, uh, and they were afraid that somebody might get struck by lightning, so they decided that was it. But I mean, that's that's just nuts. That would be. I'm not sure I'd want to see that one again. But that was. I mean, we've had quirky bowl games for quite a while now, and
Yeah.
hopefully we'll get down to the real good ones and not the others. But anyway, all right, let's pop on over to the old NFL. We already saw and talked about last night's game. Sunday night, Minnesota Dallas. Um, it's another elimination game, I think, in that case. Dallas still has a chance to win the East. Minnesota, is still in the hunt there for a playoff spot. So we'll see how that plays out.
Minnesota is just a terrible football team right now. Like, make no mistake about that
Mm-hmm.
one. They are playing god awful football, and JJ McCarthy might be the furthest thing from the answer at quarterback they could have possibly found. They found
Mm-hmm.
it was a similar case with Zach Wilson.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know who paid who or who was watching what, but somebody fooled somebody in the NFL into thinking that JJ McCarthy was a good football player.
Mm-hmm.
Like don't get me wrong. Yes, he's won at a lot of spots, and that was always going to be true.
Mm-hmm.
But to watch JJ McCarthy play football and think this is a guy who's going to like change our NFL franchise, it worked. And obviously some people in Minnesota believe that. But
Mm-hmm.
man, I would like to know who, because this is a guy who threw it like, if I remember correctly, I think he threw it 9 times against Penn State in his senior year.
Yeah.
Like, when was that guy ever going to be a guy? They didn't trust him to throw the football in Happy Valley to win a game in a top 10 environment. When did you? Was it the Rose Bowl? Was that what made them believe that he was going to be a stud in the NFL? Or is it the same thing that really honestly gets a lot of NFL teams, and that's just pride and believing that you're going to make this guy something that he isn't?
Yeah. No, and I think that's probably more to the point than anything else.
Because I mean, just a waste of a pick. And not only is it a waste of a pick, but now you're sitting here and you've got a guy in Justin Jefferson that you may have to ship out really because of your poor drafting.
Yeah. Absolutely. No question about it. I I don't know. I mean, and look at what Sam Darnold's doing in Seattle.
Yeah, I think that's really what is like the chef's kiss on this Minnesota quarterback situation is that you had a guy in the building. You had a guy who liked it there in Sam Darnold.
Yeah.
You just didn't want to pay him because for some reason you thought JJ McCarthy coming off a torn Achilles was gonna be the guy that was gonna provide, even thinking that he was gonna even provide similar results. Uh, it feels like a jaded way of thinking at best.
I had a guy tell me, when the season was over a couple of years ago, when JJ was still in college, and he told me, obviously he was a Big Ten fan, how much better JJ was than Bo Nix.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, you're obviously you're entitled to your opinion. I get that. That's what you think, dude. That's fine. But if you actually watched college football, you would know Bo Nix is, you know, head and shoulders above JJ Hart.
Mm-hmm.
And against elite competition, he didn't fold.
Yeah.
I mean, he lost 2 games in 2 years, and both of them were to Michael Penix.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And again, I go back to JJ McCarthy in college, and he won in college.
Mhm.
They went 15-0 on that 2023 team in Michigan. But then you also think about all the stuff that surrounds it. Like you've got you've got a sign stealing scandal now that
Mhm.
very possibly could have impacted the performance of the guy you're drafting.
Mhm.
Um, and if I'm being honest, like when they watched him, it wasn't anything impressive. Like there was not a game that you turned on of JJ McCarthy in college and you're like, wow, man, at JJ McCarthy, he is going to be a difference maker at the next level.
All right, let
At
me ask you.
least,
Yeah, I'm sorry. I was just going to ask you a question about this.
I,
If you're a scout, okay, or a general manager, and you look at JJ McCarthy didn't have a game his senior year where he threw the ball more than 20 pound times.
mhm,
So what kind of, can he turn around and hand the ball off? Yeah, he can do that.
yeah,
Can he make all the throws? I have no idea because he only threw the ball 20 times in a game on average.
mhm,
So, there wasn't a lot of deep throws. There wasn't a lot of, I guess the bottom line for me is there wasn't enough sample size of what he could do that would make me want to risk making him my QB1.
yeah. I think the lone exception is probably that Rose Bowl game. And to be honest with you,
Yeah.
I think that's probably what got him drafted was because that was the first time and really one of the only times in JJ McCarthy's career where you watched him like he won them a football game with his arm. Now,
Yeah.
granted, they still had a lot of big runs, but throughout college, it wasn't a it wasn't a hey JJ like we're facing Ohio State like let's go like we need you to beat Ohio State for us.
Hmm.
It was Michigan's running game that beat Ohio State while he
Hmm.
was there. It was Michigan's running game that like worked that made that offense go. If they couldn't run the ball effectively, and when I say effectively, we're talking like 4 or 5 yards of carry
Right.
type of effectiveness out of that Michigan
Reasonable.
running game
Yes.
on a consistent basis, they weren't moving the football and they weren't scoring. So, it was he was very guarded in terms of what he was asked to do at Michigan.
Sure.
And it seemed like people
Mhm.
kind of banked on that one throw in the Rose Bowl where he flips his hips and he tosses it out there on
Mhm.
the what is it? Like I think it was like a double pass
Yeah.
where they handed it off, running back passed it back to him and he threw that kind of weird throw. And it feels very similar to that of
It was a gimmick play.
yeah, it was a gimmick play, but it felt similar to that of when people watched that Zach Wilson throw from his pro day,
Yeah.
and everybody just oohed and awed. So again, it feels like I don't know how, and I don't know who got by it, but it feels like they got by some media hype because I really had a hard time finding anything with my own two eyes that said
Mhm.
JJ McCarthy's going to excel at the next level. At least with a guy like Anthony Richardson, there's physical tools that you're banking on. With JJ, his arm strength was what it was. Like that was never going to get any better. That was never going to change. So
Yeah. I mean, Richardson as an athlete was head and shoulders above McCarthy.
yeah,
The problem
yeah,
was, and someone who watches the Gators football, the problem was I didn't. I honestly couldn't say at the end of the season that I thought he was going to be a quarterback anywhere.
Yeah.
His inconsistency was bizarre, and it wasn't fun to watch. I mean, it was, you know, and I was stunned when he was picked so high in the draft.
Yeah, I was as well. I mean, like Anthony Richardson was always an all-world athlete, but
Yeah.
in terms of his ability to play the quarterback position, there was
Mhm.
always questions there. But again, it was people in the NFL, and I think this gets, it's not just it's at every level of football.
Mhm.
Like, and especially at the NFL, because now you're with the guys that are at the highest level of this
Mhm.
sport.
Right.
So they're at the highest level for a reason because they're very good at their jobs.
Mhm.
So obviously when you're that good at your job, you have this like unwavering belief that if you see a guy with those physical tools, they may not have figured it out in college, but you're in the NFL and you
Mhm.
know a little bit more, maybe you're a little bit better than those guys were, and so you think you can figure it out, and that can just get them sometimes. Sometimes it works out fine. Sometimes they find a project and they work it out. Like I remember Lamar Jackson was considered a project. Still feels like a crazy thought
Mhm.
process, but Lamar Jackson was considered a project when he was coming out of Louisville, and
Right.
now he's an MVP. The same goes for Josh Allen. You watch what Josh Allen did in
Mhm.
college, and he's not a guy that was like, yeah, he did some impressive things on film, but he lacked the consistency. He had the turnover problems,
Mhm.
similar to that of an Anthony Richardson. So at least with the physical tools, you're spinning the wheel. There's no wheel spin that comes up winner with JJ McCarthy. It's purely you're expecting him to make the right decisions, be on time and on target with his throws, because his physical tools were what they were, and when he
Right.
tears his Achilles, he loses another aspect that made him a solid quarterback at Michigan, being his wheels. Like you don't get that back immediately when you have an injury like an Achilles tear. So it feels like it was dead in the water from day one with JJ
I
McCarthy
yeah.
in Minnesota.
I gotta before we move on to the games because there's a lot of good games here. Um, one of the things that I thought was going to happen to Anthony Richardson was same thing that happened to a very talented athlete at Georgia, and that is I thought that they were going to Heinz Ward him
Mm-hmm.
because he's big, he's fast, he can obviously with quarterback hands he can catch the ball. He knows the routes, and I thought, okay, I could see somebody not that high a draft pick, but
Yeah.
okay. I mean, because I know I was doing Cower's show back when Heinz was on the Steelers, and I asked Bill. I said, what? How did this come about? He goes, the kid was an amazing athlete. He said he can, but we didn't think he was a quarterback.
Mm-hmm.
He said, now we had some gadget plays where we'd the old double throw thing you talked about earlier, right? Where we would toss the ball to him, which was a lateral, and then he would turn around and throw it. But he said, at the end of the day, we've got him for two reasons. One, his versatility and his ability to play, wide receiver, and the occasional gadget play. And oh, by the way, if just for the hell of it, if something did happen to both our quarterbacks, we'd have we had the emergency quarterback right there.
Yeah.
So and Heinz Ward had a hell of a career in the National Football League.
Yeah. I mean, it's a situation where, it's a pretty common occurrence. You hear it in college recruiting.
Mm-hmm.
It's a popular train of thought, really, over the last decade or so. When there's an athletic quarterback that comes out,
Mm-hmm.
that maybe you have some concerns about his consistency in terms of throwing
Mm-hmm.
the football. You think of Lamar Jackson; they wanted to put him at running back or wide
Right.
receiver, anywhere but.
Mm-hmm.
Same goes with Jalen Hurts. Like there are these guys that you bring them in, you're like, I'm not sure about it. So we try to turn them into something else. Heck, if I remember correctly, I think the story from the University of Georgia, they recruited Derrick Henry. I think they wanted him to play linebacker.
They
Like,
started him at linebacker.
yeah, like there's a guy who's won 3 Super Bowls now, McCole Hardman, a wide receiver. He played at Georgia.
Mm-hmm.
He was an all world kind of track guy. Like he was fast as could be. He started out at corner at Georgia. That was where he was recruited. That was his position he played in high school. He's a wide receiver now. Like these guys switch positions quite often.
Yeah.
But it is sometimes hard to tell if that position switch is going to be something that's advantageous for the player or not, because sometimes it works out fantastic. But, then they speak about it glowingly. But every time somebody wants to change somebody's position and they stick and they concede, they're like, hey, these dumbasses over here tried to turn Lamar Jackson into a running back.
Right.
What were they thinking?
Well, the coach at Pitt wanted Flacco to be a tight end.
Yep, exactly. So, it's obviously just depending on what side it pans out on. Right. People tend to look at it through the hindsight vision rather than what the actuality is of that theory. Is it's a pretty common one, all things considered, based on a guy's athletic profile.
Let's jump into the NFL here. We have Buffalo at New England. That is a serious game. Surprisingly serious for Buffalo, more than New England. They're playing, of course, that game in Foxborough. Ian Eagle and J.J. Watt have the call in that game. Really important game for Buffalo.
Yeah, it is. I think it's important just because of the way New England has came on this year. This is a game for the division between the two of them. If New England wins this, I'm fairly certain, if I remember correctly, this locks up the AFC East for them.
Yeah, they get the East.
And if I remember correctly, when I looked at their schedule a couple weeks ago, Buffalo's really like the last big hurdle for New England on that schedule.
Yeah, it's an easy schedule out.
Yeah, if they beat Buffalo, they have what feels like the easiest path to the number one seed in the AFC.
Yeah, because the other ones are in the West, and that's not easy.
Yeah, so it's important for New England because they have a chance to win the division, and they have a chance to put themselves in the driver's seat for that number one seed in the AFC. And for Buffalo, you almost have to feel like your grip is loosening on the AFC if you lose this football game, because that'll make twice that New England's beat you. That means they beat you in your building and they beat you at home or at their place. So you lose two. Your team has a lot of holes seemingly especially on defense in terms of Buffalo.
Right.
And it felt like for a long time, Josh Allen has been able to fill the gaps on that team. Like, okay, maybe our secondary isn't the best, but Josh can score with the best of them. That's fine. Maybe we don't have the best weapons, but Josh just figures out a way.
Right. In Josh we trust. Yeah.
Yeah. Josh Allen hasn't been the fixer that he really has been. And I think part of that has to do with really the talent roster that's around him. And, oh, by the way, he's turning the ball over a lot more than he did last season, in which he won MVP. A little more of a reversion to the mean in terms of Josh Allen's turnovers.
Buffalo's window of opportunity is closing rather rapidly. And if this game on Sunday goes to New England, which is very, very certainly could, I'm pretty sure that that the folks in Buffalo are going to have a long, cold winter without seeing the Bills in the playoffs.
Yeah, they are. I mean, it's just not something that can happen. Quite frankly, for Buffalo, it's not something they can afford. I know, like, sometimes people talk about fan base and like nobody needs anybody to be sorrowful for a fan base, but you would have to feel for the people of Buffalo to go through that Jim Kelly era and get as close as they got and not get anything. And if they go through this window with Josh Allen being the player that he is, and really that continuity they've had on that coaching staff, with Sean McDermott at the head, then again, it's almost like you look at him and go, kind of like, oh, poor Buffalo, if they once again find a way to not make it to the mountaintop with this group of people that they currently have in their building.
Yeah. Chargers, Kansas City, same situation for KC. This is a game that's being played in Arrowhead. Kevin Harlan and Trent Green on the call. Um, if Kansas City loses this game, they're very close to being on that bubble situation for the playoffs. They're
Yeah,
almost in the same Buffalo situation.
I I think Kansas City's in a worse situation than Buffalo is. You know,
Probably they got guys dinged up all over the place.
yeah, I mean, if the Raiders had the ability to play a competent brand of football at any
Hmm.
point in the season,
Right.
Kansas City would probably be in last place in
Hmm.
the AFC West. So they have had a really bad season.
Hmm.
But I think it's important to put context into the season that Kansas City has had.
Hmm.
This isn't something that, nobody could have seen coming from Kansas City.
Right.
They made it to the Super Bowl, and once they make it to the playoffs, you absolutely cannot count out Kansas City. But when you go back and you look at the way that season unfolded last year, it's not out of the realm of possibility for them to have had a result like this.
No,
They were very close to this same scenario,
it was
except
predictable.
except last year, all of those close games and those kind of wacky results, they were on the winning side of them. This
Mhm.
year, they're on the losing side of pretty much all of them. So it's I again, it's a little bit of a reversion to the mean, except for the fact that it's a complete flip in terms of like a statistical anomaly. Because last year, if you average it out, you'd expect Kansas City to win some of the games that they won and lose some of the games that they found a way to win. And the same thing here is you kind of expect Kansas City to find a way to win some of these games that they've been losing, given really the team and the makeup of the people in that building.
Having a little bit of problem with Matthew's microphone there for the moment. We're talking about the LA Chargers and Kansas City Chiefs in a game that's going to be played at Arrowhead, and it's the Chargers want to continue to stay relevant, so we're going to have to see how that works out. Um, let's hang for just a second with Matt's mic and see how he's doing. Tell
Can
you
you
what,
hear me?
yeah, I can hear you. Tell you what,
Okay.
let's take a break for a second and let our buddy Zach Bobo sell some houses. Okay, folks, you need a house in the Georgia or Southeast? Check out Zach Bobo. His phone number 770-876-2790. That's 770-876-2790. Zach will hook you up. All right. Meanwhile, back at the ranch, we were talking about the game with the Chargers in Kansas City. Um, let's jump now over to Baltimore and Cincinnati. Um, Baltimore's had a number of guys get hurt. Uh, that said, Cincinnati's played Baltimore. Even when Baltimore's been at full strength and Cincinnati's been bad, Cincinnati for some reason, and it works this way in pretty much every team has one. This is a team that Cincinnati could just put jerseys out there and Baltimore would have trouble with them.
Yeah. And this is a game that's important for both of these teams
Yeah,
because given the way that the Pittsburgh Steelers have played, they're both still in this race
right.
in terms of the division. So they have the ability to go out and win the division. Obviously, they're working from behind, so they need to start making up ground and beating another team, like beating an interdivision team now is going to knock them out of the competitors
Hmm.
like ranks here because Baltimore needs to win. I think Baltimore's actually a little bit closer to the playoffs than Cincinnati is,
Well, they're I
but
mean they're one
regardless,
game behind Pittsburgh. So
yeah.
in theory, if they and Pittsburgh plays Baltimore one more time in Pittsburgh at the end of the season.
Hmm.
So this if Pittsburgh stumbles again, that means that the final two games for well, the final two games will definitely be for the division at
Yeah.
this point. So there's a path for them to get there. There's not a path for Cincinnati to get there.
Is there not?
No.
I think Cincinnati, because I was looking, I think I saw a graphic on it this week. I
Mhm.
think Cincinnati has a path. I think it's just a similar path to that of the Falcons, where they
No.
have
Yeah.
to win
No.
out.
Okay. Fair. All right.
Yeah.
Everybody, both teams, both Baltimore and Pittsburgh would have to lose all the games they have to play left,
Yeah.
and then
That's
they would have
what.
to win all the games. So yeah, it's
Yeah.
exactly the same as Atlanta.
Yeah. So, odds are you're probably not going to see playoffs in Cincinnati this year.
No.
But it's a game that Baltimore definitely needs more than Cincinnati because as we just highlighted, Baltimore has a legitimate shot at making the playoffs. And
Mhm.
while Cincinnati has a chance, technically, by the numbers, like there is a path, the odds of them doing it are pretty much zero. So for Baltimore, this is more important to you. Are you going to play that way? I know both teams have been banged up, but this is still a spot where Lamar Jackson has to go win you a football game. Like
Mhm.
that is what has to happen on Sunday. Is based on the injuries and everything else. And I know he's not feeling 100%. I don't think he's fully back to himself after coming back off that injury that he suffered earlier in the year. But
Mhm.
this is a spot where he has to be the MVP version of himself against what is a god awful defense in the Cincinnati Bengals.
Mhm. No, and the other part to this situation is that Cincinnati, I believe, would love to just have some, you know, to get some karma here, to beat Baltimore, to begin to, you know, feel relevant again. They got Joe Burrow's back, and you're
Mm-hmm.
sitting around there like, it's just a feel good thing, right? It's like, okay, fine, you had a terrible season, but we sure as hell knocked these guys out of the playoffs.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I
So there's that.
I did. Since we're on the topic of Cincinnati, I am going to toss this out there. Joe Burrow had mentioned talking about having the game be fun, and it does make me, I guess, nervous
Hmm.
as to the fact of have Cincinnati's organizational failures up to this point
Hmm.
led us to a place to where their inability to field a competent offensive line for year over year going to lead us to an early Joe Burrow retirement.
Hmm.
Something that nobody wants, but something that, based on his comments made this
Hmm.
week, is very much in the cards.
Yeah, no, there's no question about that. No question about it. Let's jump over to the National Football Conference and the early games. I- I'm I I'm looking at all four of them, and I can't see one of them that I that maybe one of them that I would be interested in watching. You got Vegas and Philly. That's nothing that I'm overwhelmed with. You got Washington in the Meadowlands playing the Giants. Yeah, good
Mm-hmm.
luck with that one. Arizona at Houston, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
Cleveland at Chicago, only because in this case, Cleveland's defense is fun to watch,
Mm-hmm.
and Chicago's playing well. So maybe that
Yeah.
should be, if you're going to be, if you're tuning around at 1 o'clock for a NFC game, that might be the game you want to watch.
Yeah, I will say so. Not for viewership wise, because God bless anybody if they're turning this football game on. But that Raiders in Philadelphia game is actually extremely important for both of those teams.
Hmm.
Philly, because they're losing their grip on the NFC East in terms of
Right.
their record. The Cowboys are hot on their tail. It's important for them in that aspect. And then for the Raiders, they're currently in line to get the number one overall pick. If they were to beat a team like Philly, what a catastrophic failure from that organization at this point. Because you've now got to be in a mode where you lose every single game that you're supposed to lose. As bad as it sounds, and well, you're not competitive. I I am, and that's the reason I want you to lose because I want you to be competitive or have a legitimate shot at being competitive next year.
Yeah.
So they desperately need that number 1 overall pick because the quarterback position there, I know they got Geno Smith and they went out and they hired Pete Carroll. Those didn't feel like fixes. Like they felt like temporary substitutes. There's no type of long-term fix in signing Geno Smith to be your quarter or trading for Geno Smith to be your quarterback and hiring Pete Carroll. Like neither one of those guys are long-term answers for the Raiders. So if they get the number 1 overall pick, they have a little better shot at getting a better view in their future because they've invested in that offense in terms of weapons. And, part of the reason the quarterback play has been so bad is because the offensive line. But they've invested in that offense from the weapons standpoint. Now they need a quarterback that can actually pull the strings.
Yep. And we'll see how that works out for them. Late game, Rams Detroit. That's a important game for both teams. You got the two guys who were traded for each other. Yeah, the quarterback trade situation out in the Rams and Detroit. That's the A game for Fox on 4:30 on Sunday afternoon. Should be an entertaining game.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Matthew Stafford has a chance to put yet another bullet point on his MVP resume. A lot of people, after he won the Super Bowl, the resounding question seemed to be, is Matthew Stafford a Hall of Famer? And the biggest knock on him is the fact that he's never won an MVP trophy. That is important when you're looking at Hall of Fame resumes for the NFL. And so this is really a chance that if Matthew Stafford is able to finish this season strong and win an MVP, that would cement his Hall of Fame case.
Well, then we got Carolina and New Orleans, which under normal circumstances would not necessarily be an important football game. But if you are a Carolina fan, it's a very important football game.
Mm-hmm.
If you are a Buccaneers fan, it's a very important football game for totally different reasons.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, now you're getting into the what is a little bit fun at this point in time in the NFL, and obviously not all of them are like this, but you start getting these important divisional matchups that are deciding playoff races. Like that New Orleans and Carolina game. What is it? What does New Orleans have? 3 wins this season?
Yeah.
Are they like 3-10, 3-11, something like that? So they have 3 wins this season, and yet their results still are going to play a massive role in who makes the playoffs and who doesn't. They beat Tampa Bay a week or two ago, didn't they?
They did. Yeah.
Yeah. So they've already given you one potentially playoff altering result. Now you're looking for another one. Tyler Shuck has given them a little bit of a spark on offense, surprisingly enough. I don't think people really expected that when they picked him as high as they did. But he's given them a little bit of juice on that offense. And I'm not saying it'll happen, but that Carolina football team still feels like fool's gold to me.
Well, Dave Canales has become a very good head coach.
Mm-hmm.
And he's become the best head coach for the offense of Carolina.
Yeah.
And, they're not, to me right now, today, neither Carolina or Tampa Bay they're going to make a playoff, okay?
Mm-hmm.
And they're going to get a home game, one of the two of them.
Mm-hmm.
Neither of them, in my personal opinion, deserve to be in the playoffs.
Yeah.
But regardless of that, you can't not look at what Dave Canales has done in Carolina and say, damn, this guy has coached very, very good football.
Yeah. And when you talk about the value of a playoff spot, really specifically for these two teams involved, making the playoffs for Carolina is a lot more valuable than it is to Tampa Bay. For Tampa Bay, that just means that their draft slot gets worse, and their team gets a little older. Like they don't need playoff experience. These are all guys that have done it before. They've been there before. For Carolina, if they were to make the playoffs, that's huge because they have a very young roster, um, especially on offense, in terms
Mhm.
of Bryce Young, Tedero McMillan, Rico Dowdle. All those guys are fairly young, and they lack playoff experience. And so when you're dealing in teams that really don't have that great of a shot to win a Super Bowl, because in the current health situation that Tampa's in, as constructed, they're not in a place where they can go win a Super Bowl.
Nope, it's going to be tough. Let's pop up to Sunday night and Monday. And Sunday night's football game is Minnesota and Dallas. And we talked a little bit about that game being, we talked about Minnesota. We talked about how Dallas is doing. The Monday night game is Miami at Pittsburgh. Miami's been playing Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. I mean, it's been weird. Some of the games they've looked from fantastic. Other games looks like they're mailing it in.
Yeah, they've been on honestly a pretty incredible run, all things considered.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they have. And so you got Pittsburgh absolutely has to win this game.
Yeah,
they can't afford to lose it. The benefit for Pittsburgh is they're playing in Pittsburgh, and Miami has not done that well in games where the temperatures have been below, 50 degrees for all intents and purposes.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll have to see how that plays out. But yeah, Miami and Pittsburgh is your game on Monday night.
Yeah, and for Miami, it's honestly been kind of impressive to see. They've had this almost miraculous turnaround on their season. I mean, they started off horribly, but they've ripped off, what is it, like, I think they've won like 4 games in a row or something like that.
I think 3 out of the last 4.
There we go. Okay. And they're not in the thick of the playoff race, but Mike McDaniel's now in a situation where everybody had him fired. When they were really bad earlier in the year, we're now entering that territory where you might start talking about, has Mike McDaniel saved his job?
Mm-hmm.
It's possible.
It's possible if he wins out.
Yeah.
They'll give him another shot.
Yep.
And that'll be interesting. Okay, some final thoughts here on a Friday. You and I talked about this guy, and we both agreed that he's got a definite future. And the hottest name right now, there's 2 of them, young Mr. Kubiak and Mr. Monken are getting a lot of a lot of pub about where they could be next year, and it's not as coordinators.
Yeah. I know Monken himself seems to have really kind of put himself out there in terms of signaling to these places that he is available for hire if they're looking for somebody to fill a head coaching position. I do wonder, because I like Todd Monken a lot. I wonder how he fits as a head coach, because he's one of those guys, like we talked about it with Raheem Morris and the lack of success he's found as a head coaching. Raheem Morris is one hell of a defensive coordinator, and there's nobody in the world that's going to take that away from him. But he's not a great head coach. Todd Monken is a fantastic offensive coordinator. I wonder how it will translate when he does inevitably get a head coaching job.
I don't know. I think Monken, to me, is a guy who, at his age, okay, he's not the young guy, so he's not your young hire.
Yeah.
But he's a consistent guy who knows schemes, who is, more seasoned of a person. And I think that would put him in my mind as a someone who I wouldn't mind having as a head.
Yeah, no, he's proven, through the different stops that he's had, really of late, um, that he knows how to win football games. Like the offenses that they've had that he's been in control of. Like I think people forget Georgia, for all intents and purposes, they were good and they were solid on offense. But they went through Jake Fromm before he got there, and then in 2020 they had a little bit of a scuffle at quarterback as well. And when Todd Monken got there, things changed. So he infused a different level of offense at Georgia, and he infused a different level of offense in Baltimore when he got there as well. Lamar Jackson really evolved as a passer when Todd Monken got to Baltimore. So he's done a lot for the offense of both of those places, and with the success that he's had, you would be right in giving him a head coaching opportunity.
Mm-hmm. I mean, and there's a lot of people forget that before he was in Georgia, he was at Tampa Bay and he was at Cleveland.
Yep.
So it's not like he doesn't understand the NFL.
Yeah. And I know that it kind of popped up a little bit in reference to those open coaching jobs in college. He always made more sense as an NFL head coach than he ever would have as a college head coach.
I think, though, do you think that he would hire an OC or would want to be the play caller?
That's interesting, just because of it's easier to be a play caller and a head coach in the NFL and be successful. That's part of the reason that he fits in the NFL better. If I were guessing, I would say that he would probably maintain play calling duties initially,
Right.
and then
still hire a good OC.
Yeah, just because that's what he's done. I would say he would probably maintain his play calling duties, and then if you get a year, maybe not just a year, if you get like a year and a half in and it hadn't really worked out for you all that well, that's when you make a change and you hire, or you probably already have an OC and you turn the play calling duties over to them.
Okay. Any final thoughts before we get out here on a?
Yes, I do have some final thoughts. I've put out an article on Sports Talk Georgia and Sports Talk Florida Now regarding the Heisman Trophy. I was tried to get into this yesterday, but turns out I muted myself. And it's in reference to who wins it this year can set a dangerous precedent moving forward for the Heisman Trophy. The Heisman Trophy's own definition and criteria is the most outstanding player in college football. They're in danger of falling into the model that the NFL has fallen to, where the award goes to the best quarterback, or not the best quarterback, but the quarterback on the best team that year. And what Fernando Mendoza has done has been very good, but it's not outstanding. When I watch Fernando Mendoza play football at Indiana, I go, okay, like he's well coached and he knows how to control the offense. But what he's doing on a down and down out basis, there's nothing that you point to that goes, wow, that's outstanding. I know people will point to that throw against Penn State because everybody likes to have their Heisman moment, right? And that throw against Penn State, it's a good throw, but it's coached correctly. Like, he didn't do anything outstanding there. He felt the pressure, and he did exactly what every other quarterback does and has been coached to do. If you don't believe me, I can go turn on probably 2 minutes of Stetson Bennett film of him doing the exact same thing. Is you throw it at the crossbar where only your guy can go get it. And the impressive part of that play isn't the throw, it's the catch. So guys like Diego Pavia and Jeremiah Love deserve the award based on the criteria that the Heisman Trophy has on their website of outstanding player, because what Pavia did and what Jeremiah Love did week in and week out was more outstanding than anything Julian Sayin or Fernando Mendoza has done. It's not to take away from what they've done. They've been key pieces in winning the football game, but they're not the reason that these teams are winning these football games. And if you don't believe me, go look up Curtis Rourke's passing numbers last year at Indiana. I'll give you a hint. So far, he has more yards on less completions than Fernando Mendoza does. Go look up Will Howard's numbers at Ohio State last year. I'll give you a hint. He's outperforming Julian Sand as a passer, and he outperformed him as a runner. What these guys are doing is impressive, yes, but it's very obvious to see, based on what was done last year at both of those spots, that they are products of the place, not outstanding and pushing them to a different level that they otherwise wouldn't have been at with the talent roster around them.
Well, anyway, the way I look at it, and I'll put a button on this one, is, are they system quarterbacks
Mm-hmm.
who understands what their OC wants them to do and executes, which is exactly what happens at Indiana.
Mm-hmm.
And if he didn't play there at that position, where would they be? And I think you have to go back and look at the Vanderbilt quarterback, like we, have numerous times. You just mentioned Pavia. Without Pavia, I don't see Vanderbilt. They may have won 7 games this year.
Diego Pavia was Vanderbilt's leading rusher.
Mm-hmm.
He was the reason that Vanderbilt won 10 games. There were times in the season where Vanderbilt had nothing on offense, and Diego Pavia pretty much just willed them to a win. He did it against Missouri, and to a certain extent, he did it against Auburn as well, like where he literally just had to will his team to a win, and he did that.
Mm-hmm.
And again, I make the case for Jeremiah Love. If you take the pace that Jeremiah Love was on, because it's important to note that he split carries with Jadarian Price. Jadarian Price had 113 carries this season. If you continued his averages compared to last year's runner-up, Ashton Jeanty, he was on pace to run for the exact same amount of yards. Jeremiah Love's average was 6.9. Ashton Jeanty's average last year was 7, flat. So they were neck and neck. In terms of touchdowns, Ashton Jeanty scored 40 last year. In half the touches, Jeremiah Love scored 21. And Jeremiah Love was doing it against Power 4 competition. So I can make the case based on what I've seen that Jeremiah Love is the most outstanding player in college football.
Mm-hmm.
The only problem is that he just doesn't really have the statistics to back it up.
Yep. Well, there you go, boys and girls. It's time for us to book on out of here. We hope that you have a safe and enjoyable weekend. We'll see you on Monday. And
hey, I'm gonna
go
one
ahead.
final note.
Sure.
I had a buddy who graduated from West Point the last couple in the past year or two.
Okay.
So go Army, beat Navy.
Okay. All right. There you go. I, on the other hand, have a nephew in the Navy, so I'll take the Navy side on that one. And it's going to be, by all means, we didn't actually get to it today, and I apologize for that. But it is a wonderful game to watch, and I hope that if you're a college football fan, you tune in and enjoy it, because it is a very entertaining spectacle, to be sure.
Yeah, we could have talked about that game for 45 minutes, and I don't think either one of us really have the ability with our words to do that game justice.
No. It's a bitter rivalry, but once it's over, those guys are brothers in arms. So there's not a lot of NIL money flying there. There's not a national championships going there, but the bragging rights to get that Commander-in-Chief trophy is very important.
Mm-hmm.
So it'll be at a sold-out M&T Bank Stadium tomorrow and 3 o'clock on CBS. So if you're near a television set, check it out. All right? Okay. All right. For Matthew, I'm Jim. We will see you again on Monday, everybody. Take care. Bye-bye.